We have the Democratic NPO candidate for governor in our studio. Ryan Taylor is with us. Ryan, welcome to News and Views.
Good morning, Joel. Glad to be here.
You know, working the East today, and last night I got a chance to hear one of your stump speeches. I got to tell you, Ryan, and you were in the hot box with me on KXJB last night. One of the best speeches I've heard in a long time last night. Just common sense, good, down to earth. Hey, this is what I believe. I didn't hear a tone of Democrat or Republican in the speech. Is that the strategy you're taking?
Well, you know, we're just talking about ideas with people, and that's how we won in District 7 when I was running for the Senate. And it's beyond labels, it's beyond party, but it's really about the future of our state and what we stand for. And, you know, obviously, how I was raised and how that affects, the decisions that we'll make in the governor's seat.
I'm going to ask you some tough questions that, to me, are kind of being ignored out there. Number one, Dickinson State. If I vote for Ryan Taylor for governor of the state of North Dakota, how do you fix what happened and what is happening at Dickinson State?
Well, obviously, that needs to be investigated, and there's a lot of things that need to be looked at. But hopefully in a Taylor administration, you wouldn't have had that situation to begin with. I think a governor's called upon to have a strong board of higher education. And we haven't really changed things up in the governor's seat for 20 years right now in terms of which party controls that. And, you got to reshuffle the deck from time to time. And the Board of Higher Ed needs to know that the buck stops at the governor's seat and with the governor. All the pressure to boost enrollment and to do this and to do that, this is where it comes home.
Do you think some of those board members on the Board of Higher Education should resign?
Well, if I was governor, I would ask them all to resign, and then we would start over from scratch. Obviously, they have 4-year terms, and they need to they have the right to finish out their term. And there's probably some better and some not as good in terms of their job. But we've just seen a lot now where it is time to take a fresh look and absolutely look at another board.
Okay, the governor, the current governor that was appointed, Governor Dalrymple, now is going out and saying, you know what, we can put about $12 million to work and build some temporary ways around these communities like Williston, so that these trucks aren't going through downtown. What's your take on that?
Well, it is the right thing to do to get those trucks out of downtown. But, again, this is something that should have been done a long time ago. If we'd have went into this oil boom with a plan of how we were going to extract every drop of oil out of North Dakota that we can get, but do it in a way that doesn't break the backs of the communities. I mean, we have done a lot of damage already to this point. And, these things take time. And we are already behind the ball right now. Sure, we should do it right now, and we can get after it as best we can. But it's going to be about more than just building some truck bypasses. It's going to be about looking 20 years down the road, however many billion barrels of oil we've got recoverable here in North Dakota. Let's start making a plan for the future that does it in a way that doesn't harm our communities.
What I found really kind of offensive about that is back in 2007 when I was still in there, we were talking about that. We were pushing for that. And then the print media, the biggest print media, which you're going to be fighting, you know what side of the aisle that they're on when it comes to their editorial pages. They come out and they praise this. And it's like, where were you back when we needed you, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we told everyone that we needed to build infrastructure for this?
Where were they when Shirley Meyer and Kent Onstead called for a special session and it was denied? We know that we've got issues that go well beyond a biennial system here at this point with the growth in the oil patch. And where were they when we asked to incentivize building another refinery in North Dakota?
Would Ryan Taylor as governor be open to that suggestion? If Shirley Meyer, Kent Onstead knocked on your door and said, look, we think that there's a way to do this for private, public, shared partnership when it comes to building a refinery here in North Dakota so we're not selling the oil on the cheap, would you be open to that?
Absolutely. I was a co-sponsor on that bill in the last session. And, I would go beyond that. I would be open to it if Shirley Meyer and Kent Onstead as representatives suggested it. I'd be open to it if the Republican legislators from Western North Dakota suggested it as well, because it's not about party. It's about doing the right thing for that part of the state and making sure we, as I've said in the past, we're in eastern North Dakota, and a lot of what we need to do in the east, whether it's flood protection, flood control, work with Devil's Lake and the Cheyenne Valley, it really depends on getting it right in the west if we're going to do right by the east.
Let's move east. If Ryan Taylor's governor, how do you deal with Devil's Lake?
Well, I was just in Devil's Lake last week, and obviously, it's a little bit in terms of your style of management. One way to do it is to have just a few people in a room in Bismarck decide, well, this is what ought to be done. Well, 20 years of control that we've had right now, and Devil's Lake's been flooding for 19 of that. Obviously, that hasn't really worked out so well for them. But, you know, I think you go to the people that are living with the problem, not only around Devil's Lake, but up and down the Cheyenne River Valley. And, you know, if you're living with the problem, you probably know how to solve it. And you know, their idea is to take water out by gravity. You know, don't spend the money on those electric pumps that can only run in the summer. Use some gravity flow and get some water moving in the winter as well. Of course, we got to do it not only with those people that are affected, but with the people up and down the valley that are going to be affected as well, so that, you know, we can still not have the damage to a Valley City or a Lisbon. You know, make sure the flows are manageable, make sure the sulfates are manageable within what they need for drinking water. But let's actually sit down with the people that are at the grassroots on the ground level in these communities, and you know, they've got good ideas too.
I stood there. I was right there in the Tulna Coulee with those folks, and it seems to me that the people downstream now are starting to get the fact that if it isn't a controlled release out of that east end using gravity in a controlled fashion, that they're going to get it one way or another. I mean, they really are, and people are starting to understand that. So I think that'll connect, Ryan. What about Fargo-Moorhead? The community of Fargo is your biggest community in the state that you want to be governor of. Will you support a diversion around Fargo?
Well, we need to support the diversion and permanent flood control for Fargo, because, you know, you can't just be throwing sandbags every time the water comes up. But we still need to look for even better solutions, you know, to make that diversion work. So, you know, we don't want to sacrifice, you know, Oxbow and Hickson, and we need to do further work, and the state has a role in terms of what water retention might be able to do, what we can do to make that diversion, you know, less harmful to other communities in this area. Bottom line at the end of the day, though, is that Fargo needs flood control, and we need to do it quickly, and we need to do it in a way that gives this community the chance to just thrive without having to worry about that every spring.
As I see you run for governor, you have two big problems ahead of you, and I want to get your take on both of these. Number one, you do have somebody who's been in there for 20 years of established governance, and they have built up this machine of bringing money in. And they have the backing of, you know, if you're governor and every one of your departments is sending a check to the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce is doing its lobbying on your behalf, you know, I mean, you've got this whole big machine that you're going against. How do you break that down when you know that Jack Dalrymple could sit in Bismarck and he's going to have all the political funds he needs to make this race?
Well, when it comes down to it, people still vote in North Dakota, and dollars don't. Now, dollars can really influence an election. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of dollars going into that campaign, and as you look at the finance reports, you can sure see a 20-to-1 advantage there. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm still happy to go out and talk to people about issues, and those people vote whether they can put $50 in a campaign or $25,000 in a campaign like some of the donors have on the other side. And you know what? Those people matter just as much as the one who gave $25,000. And actually, I think they matter more in some of these issues, you know. Obviously, I'm not going to, you know, just give out a Rough Rider award to somebody who has the chance to give $20,000 or $25,000 to a campaign. I'm not just going to look out for oil drilling interest, you know, because they can put $20,000 or $25,000 in a campaign. I'm going to look out for them as well as the rancher who doesn't have mineral rights and just has the surface rights. I'm going to look out for that elderly person who's got her rent going up to $2,000 a month and can't feel like she can afford to live in the community she spent her whole life in. You know, so a lot of people need to have a voice in this election, not just the folks that got $20,000.
Ryan, if people want to know more about your race, and of course it's going to be more high profile coming up in March, you're about to get that nomination. Where do they go? What's your website?
TaylorForND.com, and it's FOR on the for part. And then they can go from there at Facebook, Twitter. We're pretty active on both of those. You know, we just finished a triathlon in Grand Forks, so if you want to see me run, bike, and ski in pictures, that's on Facebook. You know, maybe Amy could take some suggestions there. I was cross-country skiing, Amy, so, you know, that's much safer than going downhill at high rates of speed if you're looking for that.
Probably take advice from you on that, because this downhill thing might be a little frightening.
Tell you what, I'll follow you both in my Polaris Ranger. How's that?
Great.
Is that okay?
Perfect, yeah.
Is that, you know, that's my healthy way of getting out in the great outdoors, okay? Ryan, you be safe on the campaign trail. I know you're crisscrossing going to a lot of towns. Take care.
Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it.